Hi, I'm Mort Cooper, your host on Change Your Voice, Change Your Life. In studio with me is my co-host, Dr. John Curtis, and he has, together with me, one of those days, come up with the title, Why Voices Fail. I wanted to add the word, why our voices fail, but he said, you don't have to say our, it's implied, and he likes to parse it down, so it's limited to 3 words for a title, Why Voices Fail. Are you a parser?
I believe in, Occam's razor, William of Occam. I mean, very important figure in the history of science, because he really was one who really said, look, if you can give a simple explanation, give it simple. Don't elaborate unnecessarily on things, because oftentimes a simple explanation. Actually, when you think about the work that you've done over your lifetime in terms of creating direct voice rehabilitation, it's often said that it's way too simplistic. Now, why do people want more esoteric, and they want high tech, and they want all these bells and whistles?
They want complications.
Complications. Why not?
They love complications.
Yeah. And the medical profession today is trying to complicate the issue of voice. This is why voices fail. Well, they say that it's a neurological issue,
or gene related, or it is
virus,
or a virus, or a disease,
yeah,
or it's molecular biological cause, or it's chemical imbalance in the brain, or it's psychiatric. They don't look to the simple answer, which our friend William of Occam's razor, and you know why they called it Occam's razor. He cut to the core. And he also said, do not extend entities unnecessary, which means in basic, simple terms, don't complicate it, folks. Get to the essence of it, and that's it. But
why do we live in such a complicated world, especially in the area of voice treatment, when it really boils down to some very basic variables, and yet the medical community, when they treat voices, it seems like they're really obfuscating. They're really obfuscating the treatment.
I like that term, obfuscating.
Yeah.
If I didn't know better, I would think it means confusing us and clouding the issue.
Exactly. That's exactly what it means, and what it means is that we're taking something simple and we're obscuring it by creating, we're dancing around the subject, as it were, and treating the areas that are really not addressing the key factors.
Well, the question that comes down to, and we'll get very specific, as to why medicine does not get to the core of why our voices fail. Now, I used our voices again. See, I like that. Why our voices fail. Whose voices are failing? The title is Why Voices Fail, so it's a general rather than a specific. Why do our voices fail? And the answer comes down to simplicity itself. You believe that when you talk, you open your mouth, that's your real, natural, God-given voice. And unfortunately, that's not true, because at puberty, the voice changes markedly between the age of 12 and 15. For the boy and the girl, it becomes the man from the kid. The voice deepens. A huge number of people begin to talk in the lower throat. That's the kiss of death, the lower throat. I feel it's a situation. Henry Kissinger does that.
But he doesn't push it.
No, he doesn't push it, the saving
But
grace.
I mean, if he did push, you believe that he would blow his voice out if he tried to use excessive volume?
You can't talk from the lower throat. That's the one place nature says you can. And about 50% of the population talks nasal. They talk like this. On the East Coast, how are you? You feeling fine? Yeah. They're never going to have pathology. They're never going to lose their voice with that sound. It's ear pollution. I know about it because I used to talk like that too. Hi, how are you? It's a New Yorkese thing. Most of us don't use our real voice because of puberty. It's a dirty trick played on us by nature, unknowingly so. Now, the answer to it is, and the metaphor is, or the analogy is, would you believe that you can get into a car never having had any experience with driving a car? You didn't see your father, your mother, or anybody else as a role model, and just drive the car without knowing how to drive the car? I doubt it. You need some lessons when you begin to drive the car. Some of us take more lessons than others, but basically we need some direction. What happens with puberty between the age of 12 to 15, the vocal folds enlarge markedly. The male has a vocal cord or vocal fold area of about 4/5 of an inch. The female, 2/5 or 3/5 of an inch. It's very small, but it takes control away from them. And so they talk in voices that they're not accustomed to. They had a kid voice, now they have an adult voice. They don't know how to use it. Now, why do we say that voices around us that fail, and there are countless voices that fail, are due to viruses and genes and basal ganglia problems and molecular biological problems and psychiatric problems, when the person who has that failing voice never basically had a single lesson on how to use the voice. We educate the mind, we educate ourselves to write, to read, to think, but never one time, ask yourself, have you ever had a single lesson on how to use your real natural voice? And you don't answer that directly because you say, you just open your mouth and talk. The problem, John, is that you talk like that, and as you go along, people say, they avoid you, they turn you off, or they look at their watch. I got to be going when you talk that way. So you begin to talk down here. And time and again, I hear people say that. That's why they talk all the way down here.
Do most people like their voice?
No. 99% plus.
When they hear it played back on a tape
like
recorder, what do they hear?
At a moment of truth. They cannot believe that is their voice.
So it's unappealing, but what is it that do you think they find unappealing about it? Is it too nasal? Is it too thin? Is it too...
They don't recognize the voice because they're hearing themselves. Stromster at the University of Michigan many years ago came up with the answer to why we are shocked at hearing our voices. It's a very simple explanation. We hear ourselves through the bones of our head 3/1000ths of a second faster than we do from our mouth to our ear. Now, other people outside of us can hear us as we are. So when you play the tape machine back of your recorded voice, you hear yourself through air conduction as we hear you. But you hear yourself when you're talking through bone conduction, which makes the sound rich and full. And then you hear yourself playing back like this, or you're talking like that, and you can't believe that's your voice. I did a study some years ago just to show how inept we are in identifying our voices. I was teaching for UCLA, the Extension Division, and I recorded 10 people. And I had 10 people count to 10. Very simple, just count to 10. And I didn't do anything. And then I had another tape machine, and I rearranged the voices so they couldn't identify which sequence they were in. Nobody could identify whose voice it was. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because they know who they are, they think, but they couldn't identify their own voice when counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're talking like this, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Rearrange the voices that were recorded in sequence, and they can't tell.
I thought a voice is a signature for somebody. It's something that is their stamp of identity.
It is.
Then why couldn't they recognize their own voice?
As I mentioned a moment ago, they hear themselves through the bones of their head 3/1000ths of a second faster.
So when they hear it through air conduction, it sounds differently.
Yeah, they can't identify it. Stromster pointed that out over 50 years ago, which is fascinating, explaining why we can't identify our voices and we don't understand who we are in voice. So if you talk like this, you think you're sounding very impressive and very, very listenable, and people are going to listen. They look at their watch and they say they have to go. They have to go. The voice can bore people, turn them off, but it can create ill health.
But the medics aren't really focused on voice per se. They're more focused on the underlying physiology of the voice, or the neuroanatomy. Why is it that they believe that they can treat voice, which is a dynamic entity that involves functional elements? How is it that they've concluded that they can treat it only the neurology or the physiology of the voice, and that's going to be sufficient to reconstruct a voice?
They're not trained in practical voice use. They are trained in physiological, anatomical voice.
But is there a
So
correlation?
they know the structure of the larynx, they know the structure of the throat.
Okay,
called the pharynx.
is there a connection between the pharynx per se and the application of functional voice?
No.
In other words, if they can inject the pharynx, or if they can treat the pharynx, and they have for years, you've mentioned that they used to use paraffin wax.
That's into the vocal cords in 1913.
Okay.
That was Bruning. Yeah.
Okay. But now I understand.
It failed.
That may have failed. But isn't it true, I did read a report, and I believe I heard an interview, of a gentleman who is now injecting, as a matter of fact, I think he's based here in Los Angeles. He's injecting the pharynx now, the vocal cords, with collagen. And he says he can take a voice that is old and tired. Maybe he's from New York.
No,
I think
Philadelphia.
Is this
Robert Sadeloff.
Oh, is this Robert? That's right, Robert Sadeloff. Yeah,
Right.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Right.
Now, what Sadeloff said, and which I find utterly fascinating, and I think the rest of the audience will find this fascinating too, because you know that voices change over time. And in many instances, you've got these people who age with their voices, which means on a telephone, for instance, if you're doing telemarketing or you're working, you can actually pick up with individuals their aging almost to the day, if you're sensitive to it, by their voice. Now, Sadeloff says that he has developed a fountain of youth with respect to voices. He can take an old, tired, and deteriorated sounding voice and he can inject it with collagen. He thinks collagen is really what restores the natural, youthful voice. Is that true?
No, no. They're using implants. This is a whole new era of medicalizing our voices. Our voices are basically functional in nature, which means that you use them. The vocal folds are down in the lower throat, in the laryngeal area.
It's the pharynx, right?
Well, that's the pharynx. The pharynx extends from, it goes from the seventh cervical vertebrae up to the eyebrows, and it's a megaphone basis, 6 to 9 inches in long, the narrow portion down here. It's broken up into the lower throat, called the lower pharynx, the middle pharynx around the mouth, and the upper pharynx around the nose. So it's called the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. Big terms, but it means the throat, and it's broken up into the lower throat, the middle throat, and the upper throat, and it's 6 to 9 inches in length. Now, what Sadeloff, and he's a fine ear, nose, and throat doctor, extremely well known. He has the view, with his other colleagues in the field, to give a voice lift for people who don't sound right, they don't sound young, who want to sound brighter and fuller and so forth.
That's it. He said he was doing a voice lift,
Yes.
like a facelift.
Yes.
Now, I believe he's the first one to coin the term voice lift, is he not? He just came out with this.
No, I think there's another gentleman by the name of Peek Woo who's in New York. He's well known. And Stephen Zeidel, who's at the Cleveland Clinic, who for 15 years has been of the view that you should put something into the vocal folds rather than just take something out. He's a surgeon, a nose and throat surgeon. He himself, incidentally, has said in an interview recently in the Boston Globe that his voice is wearing down because he's been talking a lot. His voice is wearing down because he's misusing his voice. The voice doesn't wear out. It wears out because you're misusing it and you're putting the pressure in the lower throat. But aside from that...
Is that sort of like a tire wearing out?
Yeah.
In other words, if it isn't balanced or aligned the proper way, then you can cause a flat tire, you can cause a wear and tear on a part of it?
Yes, let's put it on another level, which we all understand.
So it's not really aging per se that wears the voice out. It really has more to do with the proper alignment.
That's correct. Let's put it on another level, the leg cramp. We do know, everybody does know, that a leg cramp is not a genetic problem. It's not a structural problem per se. It's a problem of putting too much pressure on the leg and creating spasms. Now, when you have a leg cramp, have you ever heard of anybody putting Botox into the leg cramp?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Because that would take the control away. Have you heard anybody doing a surgical procedure to paralyze the nerve?
No.
No. In regard to the voice, when you begin to misuse your voice and you get what is called a strangled voice, or you get a raspy voice, they are now putting in Botox to relieve the pressure in the lower throat And I'm saying it's like a leg cramp, folks. You don't put a foreign substance in. Remember I said the vocal folds are, with the male, 4/5 of an inch, the female 2/5 or 3/5 of an inch. Very small. You take control away and you discombobulate the individual. But aside from that, why, when the leg cramp is analogously the voice cramp, because you're talking down here or you're rasping down here, you're losing your voice and your voice is failing, and you're going to your ear, nose, and throat doctor, your medical person, why are they putting in Botox or putting implants, such as Saddleoff is saying, put in collagen? Collagen is not going to give you a voice lift. What it's going to do is add a substance to the vocal folds those vocal folds are being abused and misused by the way you're talking. So all you have to do to get a voice lift instead of collagen, or Peak Wood is using cadaver skin, pulverized cadaver skin, injecting it into the vocal fold to give you the same voice lift. So Zidell in Cleveland is talking about putting something in rather than taking something out, as well as both. Why are they doing it? Because they're not trained in voice.
Well, Saddleoff said that, you know, in order, like the face, that you have to plump the voice up. So if you plump the voice up, the vocal cords up with some collagen, the voice changes. It loses the appearance of aging.
No, it's not the appearance. It's the functionality. You're losing the ability to use the voice under your control. You're getting a foreign substance in. If you have a leg cramp, do you get collagen put into your leg? Do you have cadaver skin put into your leg? We went back in time to William of Ockham, and it's called Occam's razor, because this educator, years and years and centuries ago, said, go to the simple solution. You can get a voice lift by using just say it to yourself, and you'll feel the buzz right in your face. If you're uncertain, you're one of those who says, I don't understand this thing. I discovered it and wrote about it, and it's in my books. It's called the ing of America, and it does fantastically well. I developed a backup, so if everybody in TV land, and you can try it, Dr. Curtis, and I'll show it to you. You take your finger and put it at the bottom of your breastbone, and with your lips closed, you just jiggle very quickly and go, and your voice goes right to your face. This is precisely what Saddleoff is saying.
Is that what the voice lift?
Yes, that's what they're doing.
Well, then
I came up with the voice lift. They're using it as a medical term.
How can Saddleoff achieve a real voice lift by injecting collagen when he's not raising the pitch or the tone focus of the voice?
Well, that's what's confusing.
It is very confusing. He's saying he's got a medical approach to giving a voice lift. You're saying you have a functional approach to doing it. Why would
they're putting something in because they're medical people, and they're taught to put substances into the vocal folds. Zidell is saying...
Well, he says the vocal folds or the vocal cords are too thin. They're too worn out. And if you can
that's
plump
not,
if you can
that's
plump,
not true.
If you can plump
they're
them
not
up,
worn out.
If you can plump them up with collagen, then you don't need all of this vocal rehabilitation.
You just want to change the way they're used. It's like the leg cramp. If you just take your foot and extend the heel, you will overcome the leg cramp, and then the player is back in the game. What they're saying is they want to put a substance into the vocal folds, whether it's paraffin that failed, whether it's Teflon that has come and gone. These are rages that come on called fads and fashions of medical voice care.
Well, what about cadaver skin? That's a new one also.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. It's a fad. And
it's actually, they have a process. They happen to use epithelial cells from the cadaver, but it is a very refined process by which they neuter or neutralize these cells so that they're no longer something that would be rejected.
Why are you putting something into the vocal folds when all you have to do is change the pitch of your voice by using the C-spot? That's the item I just gave you, and in a second or two, it gives you your real voice, your natural voice, and the voice that all too many have not used after puberty or during puberty because they didn't know what to do and they didn't have a direction. When you use the C-spot, it's called a Cooper C-spot. Physicians, when they find something, a site or something new, they name it after themselves. So I named it after myself. everybody can use it. There's no copyright.
So
on it.
are you suggesting that you're equally grandiose and narcissistic as most physicians?
No, I'm not grandiose or narcissistic, but I'd like to have some credit.
Oh, you mean you don't have enough credit?
I thought anybody can use it.
I spoke with the director of the National Institutes of Health not that long ago, and she gave you a lot of credit. She told me that she was putting on a voice conference, state-of-the-art techniques.
And March 8th?
In 2003, and she told me
that
I've known Dr. Cooper for many years. He's got nothing new to report.
About what?
He said, I told him he's reporting
about a specific.
I said he's reporting cures.
Of what?
Of spasmodic dysphonia.
And what is spasmodic dysphonia?
The strangled voice. Now, somebody
Can
once
you
said
do the strangled voice so people understand what it is?
Well, you sort of talk like this. But
no, it's like this.
I want to tell you.
Well, Robert Kennedy Jr. has the strangled voice. He gets Botoxed every 6 weeks. I spoke with him by phone. He's a very wonderful, kind person. He is into the environment. He's getting polluted in his environment. His vocal cords are poisoned, a deadly poison called botulinum toxin, and it's renamed Bo for botulinum or botulism.
Doesn't sound
and
dangerous.
Toxin. And Botox is the candy-like, sweet-smelling substance that he is getting. And I asked him
the manufacturer says it's a natural purified protein.
I understand.
They say it's like health food.
Well, fine. It's one of the world's deadliest poisons. It's 10,000 more poison than rattlesnake venom. I understand. So if you want to say what you say, I want to say, as Occam said, let's get to the simplicities, and Thoreau said, let's get to the simplicities.
Look, can you be charismatic? Robert Kennedy Jr., his father, John F. Kennedy, you know, the Kennedys are associated with...
This is Robert Kennedy.
No, I know that. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And they're associated with the epitome of charisma. Do you believe that a person can have charisma if their voice is strangled?
Well, he's talking like this.
I heard him on national television. I spoke with him by phone. In and of himself, he has charisma, and he has a dedication to help the environment.
Is his
But
voice
ironically,
a
he
handicap
doesn't help his own vocal cords. He's being polluted because his ear, nose, and throat doctor is telling him there are no cures. I spoke with him by phone and said there are cures. I've been reporting cures of this condition, the strangled voice, bad, raspy voices. I've been peer-reviewed and so forth.
Did you ask him whether whether he thought it was inconsistent that he's devoted his career to saving the environment?
No.
Free from toxins, but he's injecting himself with the most toxic substance known to man?
No. I didn't get to that because he was not of the view that I was a balanced individual, telling him that I've published, take a look at my website, that there are cures, and he assured me there are no cures. So the conversation ended with his belief and his assurance that there are no cures. There are cures, and for over 30 years.
I find that fascinating because I had spoken with a, and you know this person, a woman by the name of Dot Sowerby. She's with the National Spasmodic Dysphonica Institute.
No, she's not with the National Spasmodic Dysphonica.
She's on their board.
No, she's not on their board. She's the president of the National Spasmodic Dysphonica Association.
Well,
that gets generous donations of money from Allergan, the maker of Botox.
Yes, but I spoke with her, and she talks like this. That's the way she talks. And I said, well, have you tried Dr. Cooper's direct voice rehabilitation? You know, like that. And then she tells me, she refers me to a fellow by the name of McAllister. Do you know who he is?
Yes.
I think he's the executive director of the National Spasmodic Dysphonica Association.
They're all in it together.
So what I find fascinating, I called him up and I said, I just got off the phone with a colleague of yours, Dot Sowerby. And she, referred me to you. And so he asked me, well, what's on your mind? I said, why do you think that she won't try direct voice rehabilitation with Dr. Morton Cooper? I mean, who has a different approach than Botox? Well, couldn't answer that. And I said, well, do you endorse any treatment at the National Spasmodic Dysphonica Association? He said, absolutely not. We are not physicians. And we are completely neutral with respect.
They're a 501c, nonprofit.
They're completely neutral with respect
to
by advocating a specific form of treatment. And then what I found interesting is I read an article that came out of USA Today. This was by a well-intentioned health writer named Elizabeth Wise, I believe it is. And in that article, he was quoted. And he was quoted as saying, and I thought that was fascinating because I just got off the phone with him, is that he believed Botox is the cat's meow, and that it's a godsend.
Right.
Now, does that sound like somebody who says that they're neutral with respect to a treatment?
Obviously, yes. Are you questioning a man's...
I found that fascinating.
Yes.
I mean, but what's interesting is Dot Sowerby, who is would you think, a poster grandma for the association, who's... She talks worse than the electronic pharynx.
Yeah, I spoke with her too.
Did you understand what she was talking
No,
about?
I told her, Dot, I don't understand. Dot, I'm sorry, I don't want to ask, but I can't understand you. Now, this is a lady who's been Botoxed for years, and this is the outcome, contrary to what the NSDA, National Spasmodic People, are telling us. Botox is a state-of-the-art and treatment of choice.
Or the manufacturer.
Or the manufacturer.
Who says it's 99% effective.
99%. You're getting people in this organization, the top people have jumped ship and given up Botox, but they're telling the public Botox is treatment of choice. And
the top people have jumped ship?
Oh, yeah.
Who's that?
The national, Peggy Aiken, Keith Fraser. He wrote a book on Botox. You have...
Not the ones I talked to. Boy, they still seem like they're pretty wedded to Botox.
Oh, no.
What makes you think that the paradigm can change? A paradigm is an interesting thing because it's sort of like an alive kind of growing creature, like a large amoeba. How do you change a paradigm when the pharmaceutical establishment is committed to promoting the sale and the distribution and the use of Botox?
And control the field. Who says you change it? You just understand it. We're closing in the last few seconds.
Well, why do voices fail? I mean, the medical community says it's a neurological problem, it's a biochemical one, it's viruses due to a lot of things.
Yeah.
You think it's maybe William of Ockham had something to say about this?
Yes,
It's a more simple
these
process.
Things go on and on. Thank you, Dr. Curtis. Why voices fail? Ask yourself. You're misusing your voice. Thank you, folks. Bye-bye.
No, I mean, I think they say that it's medical. They do not subscribe to the... I asked a
They
colleague
say
of
it's
yours,
medical because they're not trained in voice
I asked a
use.
colleague, Arnie Aronson. He says, look, you know, it's
Aronson is
what
an icon
Cooper's
in the
doing.
field.
He said he's curing people with psychogenic varieties of spasmodic dysphonia. It's a mental thing. I said he doesn't do psychotherapy.
Well, how do you know I don't do psychotherapy?
Well,
Maybe I'm doing it in the back room.
I've read your book. I've read your
Well,
book. I know
no,
what
I
you're
don't
doing
do
with
psycho.
people.
What
And you're
I'm
not
doing,
doing neurology.
I'm showing them how to use their voice. That's functional. It's a different approach. But they don't understand that. So I'm off the board.
I think it's fascinating that it is like a night and day difference in the paradigm, because you're saying that this thing is functional. They're saying that it's medical.
That's right. That's the entire difference, and it's not going to change. They control the turf, and they have the drug companies, and that's the way it's going to be.
Well, or do the drug companies have them?
I think it's...